Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Riffhard Podcast. My guest today is Grant Truesdell from the band Unleash the Archers, who have a brand new album called Phantoma, which is out now. Now, I had never heard them before doing this. I had heard of them, but hadn't heard them. But I've been seeing their name around everywhere, and so I went and I checked them out, and much to my surprise, they were power metal. Not what I was expecting, considering how big they're getting over here in North America. It's just not a normal thing. So right away, that's interesting to me, because it's always interesting to me when something succeeds, which is not the norm. So I was excited to speak to Grant. And as it turns out, this was one of my favorite episodes ever. I want to apologize in advance. The audio and the video got a little fucked up. And that's because you can probably see this is a new setup. We've been ironing out some kinks, and unfortunately, the video got fucked up. But we felt like it was a good enough episode to just give it to you anyways, as is. So bear with us, growing pains. It's very worth it. It's a very inspiring episode, and it's one that I can relate with a lot, because this is a dude who has a lot going on. He has a lot going on. He's juggling several things, yet somehow he manages to pull off a band, stay great at guitar, be a family man, all the above. And for those of you who feel like you don't have enough time to devote to music, or you can't figure it out because you've got so much other stuff going on in your life, this might be a good episode for you. In fact, I think this is a good episode for you. All right, let's get into it. Unleash the fucking Archers. Grant, welcome.
Like when you put it that way.
Yeah.
That emphasis.
I mean, that's what I think of when I think of your band name.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty epic imagery, you could say.
Yeah. I've been seeing your name a lot lately. And I'm be honest, I wasn't familiar with you guys until this came up. So I just obviously did my research, and been seeing your name in lots of contexts where you don't normally see the genre of music that you guys play, which I think is really, really cool. Like, I associate your style with stuff that I know is big in Europe, but you don't hear about it super often here from North American bands. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to have said that, but that was the first thing that struck me was, this is cool. It's a very European style, the North American band. And I guess I relate to that because a lot of people think that my band is European. I guess it's half European now, but, and it's been an American band. Are you mostly influenced by European bands, or am I just talking out my ass? These were my initial impressions.
Yeah. I mean, you're pretty accurate as far as power metal goes. Which I would say is kind of the core of our sound, at least for the past few albums. Like Andy and I, we kind of grew up on, European power metal, but personally, my favorite brand of power metal comes from Brazil, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which, bands like Angra and Hybria, Edu Falashi's got some really good stuff coming out now, and Shaman. And so, but I feel like we try our best to, not just extract influences from one certain area, and we just kind of write what's really kind of in our hearts. And as you may or may not know, our past few albums are very concept story based. So that's what really determines a lot of the sound and music that we write for it. It's really to convey the emotions in the story, but it's kind of inevitable that some of the early bands that we were into, like Lost Horizon and Ed Guy and Halloween and Stradivarius, all those more kind of shreddy power metal bands. That's what always drew me to the genre, was the kind of virtuosic elements of it, the crazy shredding guitar solos, fast drums, the soaring vocals. So yeah, and it took us a while to make it over to Europe, and be able to play over there. And, I feel like we've been able to cultivate the North American scene a lot more just because of our proximity. Being in Canada, it's a lot easier just to kind of do a North American tour.
Yep.
So that's probably why we're kind of being seen on the North American outlets a little bit more, I would say.
So I have a question about the story and concept-based writing. Just because for my own personal writing style, I find that very difficult. Now, I've got someone in my band who's he writes for video games and stuff, so he's very familiar with taking a concept and making it music. But for me, I've never really been able to do that. Like, I find that when there's a concept, like I can't get to that like place of like pure creativity, because I feel like I'm trying too hard to describe this concept with sound. Like I'm trying to be too literal. So I guess for me, it's always been a block. But I know that that's just me, because there's plenty of great bands and artists over time who have done it, mastered it into whatever genres of metal exist now that do it. So what I'm wondering is, how do you go from a story or a concept and have that then translate into music that will stand on its own for just a music listener who might not even know that there's a concept? Like, how do you make it emotionally resonant?
Right. Yeah. It can feel constrained in that you're like trying to put, a square block in a round hole sometimes, which, you don't want to force anything too much in music, right? Because if you're trying to make things fit just for the sake of making it fit, it's probably not going to work out. I always kind of come back to like what Elton John would say, like if he couldn't, get the lyrics in front of him and just kind of come up with a song on the spot, then it wasn't really going to work out. So I think as far as songwriting and creativity goes, I see like two different camps as far as writing. There's what I tell a lot of students I work with, and what I try to do myself is, have 10 minutes a day where you're not necessarily writing for anything specifically. You're just getting riffs out, just getting call it the bag of riffs, just building up that vault of riffs, right? And that's just seeing where things will take you with no constraints at all, right? So there's like that camp where you're just getting ideas. And then there's the idea where it's like, okay, now we want to write a song, right? So, and I find the opposite. I find when there's like a constraint, it kind of makes it easier to choose what is kind of allowed into the song. It's not just like, okay, we got this riff and we're going to go into this riff, and then you got this riff and you just kind of put them together and we got a song. It's like, no, it's very intentional on how we want the song to sound and make you feel and what it needs to convey before we even start throwing any riffs into it. So I find kind of having those kind of limits, so that when you come up with a song, like, hey, this is a great song, but it just doesn't fit this album, right? We just kind of shelf the song, right? So it's very, very selective on what we kind of let into the album. And I find by doing that, it just like the flow of it, it all kind of makes sense. So the way we've done it for the past few albums is Brittany, our vocalist, she comes up with like the story in her head initially, right? She's usually stewing on this for however long, and okay, we're going to start writing an album. We usually give ourselves like 3 months, 4 months. Okay, we're going to write an album now. We're all kind of ready. We like to take time away between albums and stuff so we can grow as musicians, so that we're coming back to the writing process with fresh ears, with new influences. We're different people, so we're not just kind of writing the same album time and time again. So she essentially, she gives us like, okay, she's got the vague story of kind of what she wants to have happen. And she's like, okay, now I got to break it down into 10 tracks. Okay, what's going to happen in this track, this track, this track, this track. And she just gives us like bullet point form synopsis of what's going on in the story, how, what kind of feel it should be. Is it going to be kind of a mid-tempo kind of anthem? You know, is it good? It's going to be a really fast, in-your-face power metal shredding song, and then maybe a few like songs that she's kind of thinking of, kind of like this song, kind of like this song. You know, maybe think of this movie. You know, any sort of imagery that she can give us before we start writing, so that we're like, okay, we kind of get into that mindset before we start writing. And I find it really helps give direction to the writing process, opposed to just like, okay, now I need to come up with a song, no idea where I want to take it, you know. So I find it doesn't have to be a big concept story, right? But even if you're just writing a standalone song, starting with any sort of concept of where you want the song to take you before you start doing it gives it a lot more cohesive flow and depth, to be honest, too, because, you know, I work with guitarists and they're wanting to write instrumental music, and I'm like, still start with this like a concept story. Like, what is the music going to take you on a journey, right? Don't just have a collection of riffs taped together, right? You want to take the listener on a journey. So yeah, I mean, we really enjoy writing albums, right? We're not much of like a single band, right? Because it's like, okay, we got the album, we know what the album wants to say, we know what each song wants to say, and everything has, every little riff, every little note has like a piece into the bigger picture.
That's just blowing my mind, and here's why. Because, okay, so I understand what you're saying about the riff salad, and I agree 100%. Like, I think one of the biggest problems with metal, and especially more modern metal, is that you could take on any given album a riff from song 8 and put it in song 2, and you wouldn't even know, like, you wouldn't be able to tell, because it's literally just riff plus riff plus riff plus riff plus riff. So, like, I think that's a big problem. So basically, I'm saying that to say that, yeah, I totally agree with you there. The thing for me, the reason this is blowing my mind is because when I write, all the things that you just said are going through my mind. Like, there's a theme. However, it's like this musical concept that's very hard to define. I have it in my head and in my heart, and every riff and every part is either with that theme or not with that theme, and every single moment is there purposefully and for a reason. It's never just like this riff from here, this riff from there. But the moment that I start adding like a verbal story to it, I start to hit a wall with being able to do that. As long as I keep it to just this musical concept, but it's not like a theoretical concept or like, yeah, we're going to write a song at 5/8 and it's going to be sick or something. Nothing like that. It's like, it's hard to explain because it's this like emotional musical concept, going to express this thing that I can't express with words. So I know it, my intuition knows it, but there's no words for it. And the moment that I start adding words, that's when we get off. So that's why what you're saying is really fascinating to me, because it's almost like the same thing, except you have an actual verbal story, a verbal concept. But at the end of the day, the end result is that there's no fat, basically. It's all there for a reason. It's all either structure or muscle or whatever, like, but it's all there intentionally, which I think is really what matters. I think that's what actually matters the most, is intentionality.
Yeah, and I think it would be, hard to have to write the music and come up with the story and write the lyrics all by yourself. That's why I'm so kind of grateful that we have different members in the band that excel at different things, and you can kind of trust each other. We kind of build upon each other. So yeah, I think Brittany writes the lyrics. Like, that's one of the last things she does. Sometimes she's still writing the lyrics in the studio, like the day before she's got to record them. She's got all the melodies kind of figured out, but the lyrics are like the last thing that comes.
I think that's normal.
Yeah.
With the good vocalists, I think that's normal.
Yeah, because you kind of need to hear the full soundscape to where you can kind of fit in and not be, having to sing over anything too weird.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, so given that there's a concept to start with, and the vocals are going to basically narrate it, even though, I guess you could say the music narrates it in its own way. You definitely have to write with the vocals in mind, but the lyrics are coming in at the very, very end. So being that you don't totally 100% know what's going to be there or if it's going to work, how do you navigate that in the writing process? And then when you get to the actual production process.
Yeah, that's a good question, because sometimes she gives you like little hints of what's happening in the story, but you still don't really know. I'm like, what happens in this part of the story? Like, you still don't fully know. So that's why we'll bring a song to the band, and we kind of leave it up to Brittany to be like, oh, that's we sometimes will write intentionally for a certain track, and she's like, oh no, actually that's like this track, it's totally this song, or she'll be like, this just doesn't fit the album or something, right? So I think in general, this is just a good model to kind of live by. If you're working together in a group creatively, you kind of have to let your ego kind of step aside and be okay with parts being taken out, with being changed. You can't get too attached to a part. We always kind of have this philosophy that you just want to do whatever's best for the song and ultimately best for the album. So, I don't think anybody's attached to, it's like, it's got to be my idea, that like actually wins,
me.
Yeah. It's like, we'll try everything out as many different ways just to find the right way to do it, either with the drum beat or whatever. And I think just having, just kind of trusting each other to kind of be able to deliver on your individual parts as well. You kind of like go into the studio with a little bit of uncertainty. Like, I don't know how this part's going to be, like there was one song on the new album where I wasn't there in the studio at the time. They kind of rearranged this whole like bridge section, and it turned into this big like drum and bass solo. I was like, oh, what the hell? What happened here? And like at first, when it was just the drums, I'm like, this part is so empty, But then by the time everything kind of came in, ended up being this epic big bass solo and like all these synth stuff, and I was like, ooh, this is actually a really cool part now. So you kind of got to like trust everyone's individual vision as well, even if it is your song. So, I think writing also to allow certain parts kind of unfinished, so you can kind of allow somebody else to put their own little kind of layer on top of it is really important too.
Yeah, I think the key word there is trust. If you don't trust your band members, then I think you got to ask yourself, why are you in a band with them? There might be a reason. Like, maybe they do all the socializing and they get us all our tours and our record deal, and we deal with the fact that they can't write worth a shit. Like, I've seen that in several bands where there's a member of the band who's like the business manager and like the manager, like the band manager, but they suck at writing or something, or they're like not that great at playing, but they're the engine that moves the vehicle. So people work around them. But in that case, in the successful bands where I've seen that happen, there's still a trust. Like, that person trusts them to know what they're doing musically, and they have kind of like an agreement. It might not even be a spoken agreement, but there's still trust there. So I'm thinking, like, if you're in a situation where you don't trust your band members, and you don't feel like you can rely on what the end product's going to be, despite people's strengths and weaknesses, then why are you in a band with them, I think.
Yeah, very true. And obviously that takes time to build up to that. You know, we've been playing together for quite some time now, and I don't think it was fully at that, you know, earlier on, you know, when we were still kind of maturing as songwriters, you know, we were still kind of figuring it out. But like Andy, the other guitar player, we've been playing guitar together since we were both 12 years old. You know, so for over 20 years in previous bands and stuff. So, and then the rest of the band, you know, I trust these guys, not only musically, but with like every other aspect of my life. You know, we've grown together for, you know, better part of a couple decades now. That, yeah, it's something that just kind of builds upon itself, you know, so anybody listening here who are in a band and you're like, man, I wish I had that sort of trust. Just give it some time. You know, you can't build that without giving up some of your own creativity, right? You got to give people a chance, right? And sometimes they might break it. Sometimes they might surprise you, and build that up even further. But it's a hard thing to do, to trust so anybody else, whether it be another musician or a manager or a booking agent or anybody starting to take any aspect of your career in their hands. You know, when it's for most musicians, this is a pretty important part of your life. You know, not just intellectually, but like emotionally. You know, you're very emotionally attached to what you create, so it's hard to give that part up. But yeah, you have to give a part of it up, right? To be able to grow. You can't do anything alone these days. So
yeah, the whole lone wolf idea, I think, is a myth. And I think it's a myth created like in the 90s with VH1 documentaries, the behind the music kind of documentaries, and magazine articles where they would focus on one person, the best looking person or the front person. And because we only had limited like insight into the world of music back in those days, it was easy to build up these myths about artists. And this idea that, like, say, Trent Reznor, one-man band, when we all know now he's always had a writing partner, but but he was built up as the one-man band. And there's so many of those lone wolf stories, but that's like almost never ever the case. Like, there's always a team involved. I think there's a flip side though to what you're saying, because I completely agree. You have to be able to let go of your ideas. You have to be able to let other people in. But also, if for some reason you don't trust them and you got that voice telling you like, this manager's a shyster, or this musician's, it just doesn't get it, like, then they're never going to get it. Like, it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of chemistry, compatibility, or they're just not, they're just never going to be aligned. Like, you have to, and this also takes maturity. You have to learn to know when that voice in your head is telling you the truth, or when it's just sending off ego-driven signals. It's tough to know the difference sometimes, but it's really important.
Yeah, you know, I definitely agree. I don't want anybody to go out there and just give everything out and get stabbed in the back, left, right, and center.
Or just have a really bad band that can't communicate, or that's incompatible because you're trying to work with people who don't share a vision or something. Yeah,
no, 100% true.
Yeah, so it's this weird line you got to walk to where you have to, like, have to be comfortable with the idea of I'm gonna let a little go, or I'm gonna let something go, because I know that if I put it in this person's hands, it's gonna end up fine or better than it would have. I feel like you might not be able to get there right away, but I feel like you should have some sense in you, like you should be able to see that with time it'll get there, I guess. Like it's weird because you never really know, but I feel like you have to have some sort of faith that the people you're working with will develop into what needs to exist for things to work, I guess.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of that, you also need to know when to cut people out.
Yes.
You gotta. I'm all about forgiveness, but there's forgiveness, and then there's just stupidity. If you're continually getting betrayed or let down, then you gotta know when to put your foot down, and either have a tough conversation, right? Communication is key, or just unfortunately part ways. And we've had to do that with people in the past, and it sucks at the time, but you grow from it, and ultimately it makes you a better person, makes you a better unit.
Well, the results of not doing that are way worse.
It's like, it could be like cancerous, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It continues to plague, whether it be just somebody's attitude even, so we've always had this kind of philosophy in the band that, it matters more about somebody's character and somebody's attitude as far as bringing somebody in than their competency. Obviously we want like great musicians, but if they're not like a great person, because you're spending so much time with these people,
yes,
that's first and foremost. Like just be a good person out there, and it'll go a long way. You can learn any skill after that. You can get better at playing guitar. A lot of musicians who aren't even that good, right? But you don't have to be this crazy shredder to make good music, right? It's all about, reputation is key, right? It's hard to change your reputation. Your reputation is built off of everything you've done in the past. And to change a bad reputation is, man, especially this day and age with the internet and cancel culture, and you got to be extra safe with that.
Yeah, so be cool, basically.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
No, don't be a dick. But
unless you need to be.
I mean, unless it's warranted. But
yeah,
the thing is, if someone has a personality that works for the project and they have a skill set that needs development, as long as it's not too far off the mark, that can be fixed.
Yeah,
that with some work. Absolutely. I've seen it happen many, many times. Like it doesn't, that's not going to destroy a band. Like, you say you have two guitar players, one's tighter than the other one, but the other one's tight enough. It's not going to destroy the band if one of them is like an Olympic athlete and the other one's not, as long as there's a good reason for them working together, I think. Yeah. Like, that disparity is not going to destroy the band. If the great guitar player is a fucking monster human, that might destroy the band, actually. I've seen that happen.
Yeah. I think we can think of a few examples here, which we won't name, but...
No names. Okay, so speaking of guitar and musicianship, because we've talked a lot about the human side of being in a band and the writing side. All of those sides take a long time. Like, writing takes a while. The business of being in a band, just keeping the machine going, takes a while. and I guess now I know that you also teach. So where does your just straight up you as a guitar player, getting better as a guitar player, where and how does that fit in?
Man, you just gotta make a priority of it, because I also have kids, I've got a family.
Yep.
So time is not something I have a lot of. So just, you get what you must have in life. You don't get what you should have. If you'd be like, I should do that, I should practice more. There's certain things that no matter how busy you are, you get done. We all find time to brush our teeth in the morning before we go to bed. We all find time to eat. These things that are a must, like you can't live without, you make sure you get done. So anything you want to get done, whether it be exercise, whether it be practicing more, you just have to make it a must, right? So make it a priority. So the other flip side to that is making it as easy as possible to do, not having this, so I tell myself like, okay, I've got this like picking hand warm up that I do. Just to a metronome or a drum beat, just working on my picking technique, just downstrokes, upstrokes, alternate picking, things like that. Tell myself, okay, at least 5 minutes. At least I can do it for 5 minutes. Put on the timer. I've got a digital timer here I use all the time. Because the hardest part about doing anything is just starting. Once you get in the seat with the guitar in your hands, you tell yourself, okay, 5 minutes. I can't talk myself out of 5 minutes. Surely I have 5 minutes to spare in a 24-hour period, right? So once you get there for 5 minutes, man, before I know it, an hour has passed. I've gone through a bunch of other stuff, right? So just, everyone tries to optimize for the finish line. I tell people to optimize for the starting line.
That's a great idea.
Just get started. Just make it as easy as possible to just do even 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Just say yourself 2 minutes. You're just going to review the notes on the fretboard, depending on where you're at, right? Just go through one note a day. Today, go through your C notes, every note on the fretboard. Tomorrow, go through D notes. Whatever it is, make it as easy as possible to get the guitar in your hand and going. Whether it's exercise, okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes of walking, right? Because it's not what you do once in a while that builds up to success. Is what you do consistently. So if you're doing 5 minutes a day, every day, it's so much easier to build that up to 30 minutes a day, every day, an hour a day, every day, right? And that's where real progress, I find, happens,
That is very, very true. And the thing, too, is if you do the 5 minutes and it's just not happening, okay. But I guarantee you that if you do the 5 minute test, 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 times, it'll lead to more. And maybe 1 out of 100 times, you'll be like, fuck this, I'm not playing guitar today or now. It's just not happening. But that'll be rare. If you actually sit down and get started, you'll probably end up being there for longer than 5 minutes. And I'm saying that because lots of people might be thinking, well, you're not going to get better with 5 minutes. And it's not about the 5 minutes. It's about the psychological aspect of what happens when you just start. Because I think that the biggest problem we have with progress is inertia and momentum. Like those are the two things that you need to factor for the most. Once you have momentum, things are easy. When you don't have it and you're in inertia land, that's when it's the most difficult. So the most important thing is overcoming the inertia and getting the momentum going. Once it's going, things are an order of magnitude easier. So I think I think you're right. Optimize for the start. That's 100%.
And once you do that 5 minutes, especially if you do it early in the day, like say you do it, but you got to wake up 5 minutes earlier. Surely anyone could do that, right? Mm-hmm. 5 minutes, that's it. Once you do that, it's kind of in your mind for the rest of the day. You're thinking about it, right? It's kind of like planting the seed. So it's you kind of feel compelled to want to come back to whatever it is you're doing, or instead of watching YouTube shorts or random stuff, you're actually watching something that's related to what you want to learn, right, on your commute or whatever it is, right? You're kind of more focused around growth rather than just, there's two ways to spend time. Either you invest time or you spend time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you spend more, take more time to invest it, right? Whether it be continuing to learn or whatever it is, you'll find that you move towards whatever your ultimate goal is a lot quicker.
That was another thing too, what you just said about the first thing in the morning. So I had a lot of, I guess, voices in my head saying like, well, you should really focus on URM first thing in the morning, or most important thing to do first thing in the morning is exercise, or like all these other things. Because I am able to practice, I can practice last thing in the day and still have a great practice session. I don't have to be, in order to write, it's probably better to be like first thing, but to practice, I've noticed that it could be 10 p.m. and I could be super tired and I could still get 90 minutes, quality 90 minutes in. So the thing though, the big difference is that if I do it in the morning, it warms me up for the entire day and it sets me on a good path. So I have this minimum, this 20-minute minimum thing that even if the day is not going to let me get to the guitar till super late, if I just do that, everything always just goes better, because I don't know, I just woke up that part of my brain.
Yeah.
Even at 10 p.m., that practice session will go better if I did the thing in the morning. Or sometimes I can just start in the morning and have the whole practice session in the morning. That's the best. But if I do that 20-minute thing, and then I only get 10 minutes in the afternoon and 20 minutes later, it's always better if I got that 20-minute thing first thing.
Well, there's something that happens psychologically too, where you're hey, man, yeah, I'm working on things that are actually important to me.
Yes.
It kind of is a confidence booster and self-esteem booster for the rest of the day, because you're hey, I'm taking time to prioritize things that are actually important to me. So, and yeah, 5 minutes. Some people might say, oh, you can't get a lot done in 5 minutes. You can't get a lot done in 10 minutes, 20 minutes. If it's focused, deliberate practice, there's a difference between just playing guitar and focused, deliberate practice, right? If you're working on a specific technique for, get yourself a digital timer just like this, right? 5 minutes of dedicated, focused practice on one exercise to a metronome, slowly bumping it up every day makes a big difference, right? So, there's a big difference in how you practice, right? If you're doing it effectively, then you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. If you're playing guitar for 8 hours a day, you don't have to be as deliberate with that, because you're just getting so many reps in. It doesn't really matter as much. But if you only have a short amount of time, you got to be really deliberate with what you're practicing and how you're practicing it. But it
absolutely
can make a big difference.
Totally. I definitely have heard people say that's not enough time. You can't get anything done in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15. But the question I have when people start saying that is, what's the, where are you drawing the line? So if you say 20 minutes is too little, at what point is it enough? Is it 21 minutes?
Yeah.
22 minutes, 21 minutes, 30 seconds? I think that when people say that shit, they're just talking out their ass, because what I know to be fact is what you said. And I know this because because I've experienced it, and so many people that I know who are good at things have experienced it too, that it's more about how you spend the time than how much time you spend on things. So I would have Petrucci on here once, I remember, and he told me that sometimes he'll practice in 5-minute increments all throughout the day. He'll do 5 minutes an hour, on days where he just can't prioritize guitar. He'll do 5 minutes here, 7 minutes there, 5 minutes here. whatever, and
100%.
still gets it done.
Yeah. I mean, if it's working for Petrucci,
That's what I'm saying.
I
Exactly.
think you're good, boys.
That's exactly it. But it's interesting. It's like, so Petrucci, of all people, will back that up. And so if it works for people like that, why think it wouldn't work for you? This is what I wonder. It's like, I think I used to have this problem where I felt like if I didn't meet this time requirement, that it just didn't even count. And it was a really positive thing once I changed my thinking about that, obviously more time's better, but time well spent is even better than how much time.
The other thing too is some people might say, 5 minutes is not enough, opposed to what, 0 minutes? If
Exactly.
Two options.
Yeah.
What's going to move the needle further? But I
That's
think
right.
an also important factor to all of this is kind of having a game plan from the start, so you know what to practice in these 5-minute increments. Like I'm sure Petrucci wasn't just like, okay, I got 5 minutes, I'm going to turn on the timer and
Just do anything.
Yeah, he's got very deliberate things that he wants to kind of check off his practice routine on a daily basis, right? So you gotta do the homework beforehand to be able to make these small little increments work, because they all have to be, just like we talked about with songwriting. Everything kind of pushes towards the bigger purpose, right? You want to optimize for the starting line, but it all has to be, you got to be running in the right direction.
Totally.
So you got to still have an end goal that you figured out a little bit. Doesn't have to be too concrete, but at least a direction that everything is moving towards the same way.
So how do you pick your objectives for short practice routines?
Yeah, good question. So I think you can break it down into a few different sections. Like there's like a warm up, right? There's warm up exercises that I use really just to warm up my fingers, and also kind of use this time to listen to the notes and make sure that technique is all being practiced properly. So that's a pretty short section, right? You shouldn't be spending too much time on warm-ups. And then there's technique, right? So you want to have a few different exercises for technique, whether it be alternate picking, legato, sweep picking, hybrid picking, whatever new technique you're kind of trying to work on. You can have each one of those kind of broken down into a few different exercises, right? So you want to be practicing things slow, right? Focus on kind of one note speed bursts, also known as kind of transition time, right? You also want to be, you can.
What do you mean by transition time?
So I got this from a guitar player named John Bjork. He really teaches this, and it's these one note speed bursts, right? So you're playing at a really slow tempo, but things are really still legato connected. The notes are connected. So you're holding out each note as long as you can. And then when it's time to actually change notes, you're playing as quick as you can on your fretting hand. You don't want to do it, accent it too much in your right hand, because then you overemphasize it, but it's these boom, right? So you're still moving from note to note in one swift motion, but really quick. Dun.
Okay.
Dun. 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 Right? So you're practicing essentially these one note speed bursts. So you're practicing on the transition time, the time it takes to hit one note. So it's like a one note speed burst.
Yep. Okay. That
right. So there's all these different ways to practice one technique, right? So you can do this transition time. You can change where you throw the accent on, right? So you can have the accent on, say you have a 16th note or four note, or kind of loopable pattern, right? A lot of people always try to have the accent on beat one, right? Take it. 1 and a 2 and a right? So you can change the accent to the second note, right? And it changes your focus to that note in the whole run. So there's all these different things that you can do to work on one technique, whether you're just doing speed bursts, right? So I kind of refer to this as like, say you see people maybe sometimes in the gym where like the treadmill is like going already really fast and they're trying to like just jump on it and they just get like 1 foot, right? Try to just kind of get the gauge of the speed, right? So same thing with like practicing guitar. You can just do like 2 notes, right, in the run at the max tempo, then 3 notes, right? Then 4, right? Right? Just work on those 4, right? And just slowly build it up. So you can have 5-minute sections to work on each one of these small little techniques, right? It's not just playing guitar, right? So there's warm up, there's technique building, which is a very big topic, right? There's so many different ways to practice all that, like we just talked about. And then there's theory, right? So there's a lot of things you can do just theory-wise, even without a guitar in your hand, right? So these are things that you can do if you're driving, ear training. But it could be anything around just working on triads and inversions. Very early on, I see this with a lot of guitar players who don't know the notes of the fretboard, right? Spend some time just to learn the notes on the fretboard, right? Everybody knows the first 12 frets on your E and A string, but do you know them everywhere, right? So spending some time to learn that, chord construction, scales, and then also having sometimes just some free time for improv, right? Trying to put all these techniques and this theory into practice. So it really depends on your goal and what you're trying to get better at, where you want to prioritize your time. But those are the 3 main ones. And then there's songwriting and creativity, right? So I try to at least have 10 minutes a day of just what I call meandering, right? And very important to film yourself doing this, because you never know what you might play by accident, that if you didn't film it, it's going to be really hard to remember what you just did sometimes. Yep. Sometimes I do so, what was that? I wasn't filming. What the hell did I do there? And sometimes you just can't recall what you did in the moment. So,
that's a good one.
Yeah. I got that one. One of the biggest takeaways, I did a all-day guitar camp with Kiko Loureiro.
AKA God.
Megadeth. Yeah, I was playing in Angra. But that was one of the big things. You film yourself 10 minutes a day, just coming up with ideas, right? And I've found on my own, there's kind of 3 ways to approach that. There's like just forcing yourself, okay, camera's on 10 minutes, just starting from wherever your fingers take you. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you're like, I don't know where to start from, right? So there's just random meandering, which is that. What I found to almost be the most productive is using a riff or a song that you're either working on or learning, or a song that you really like, as like a launching pad, right? So you put on the camera, you start with that original riff, right? And you maybe just kind of start to tweak different things about it, right? Just change a note, maybe go to a different chord, change the tempo. Keep doing this for 5-10 minutes and you'll be so far away from that original riff that it's this completely new thing, right? And you never know what you might find in that process in between it. So I find that's a really powerful way just to fill up the bag of riffs, just to get ideas. You're not writing for a specific song yet. You're just meandering. And then there's the third one where you just get like divine inspiration. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I got this idea. I got to get this recorded, right? Sometimes it just comes to you in the middle of the day. So either you got to record a voice memo in the middle of traffic or something like that, or when you're walking down the street, or sometimes you're just playing something else and like you're like, oh, that was cool. Just film yourself, get it captured somehow, some way, and then maybe continue with it. Keep playing for 5-10 minutes, see where it takes you. So hopefully
that's all great advice.
People some ideas, yeah. So yeah. I guess when it comes to prioritizing, because that's like, that could be, if I do that in one sitting, that's like a 3-hour practice session right there, right? So
Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah, so just having those items like either on a spreadsheet just written down, right? I've got whiteboards right here that I like to keep them on, and I kind of like check them off, and I kind of look at, okay, well, haven't I practiced today? Oh, I'll do that one, right? I've got 5 minutes, right? Just do it. And if you've planned it out beforehand, then it makes it a lot easier. Album, I'm prioritizing more writing riffs and being more creative and working on technique, so I can be good for the studio. If we're gearing up for a tour, then it's more focused on repertoire and warm-ups and working on my technique. So It really depends on what you have coming up as far as goals or events, things like that.
Makes sense. Well, dude, I think it's a good place to end the episode. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to hang out. It's been enlightening and very, very interesting. So thank you.
Yeah. No, that was awesome, dude. That was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
Again, 100%.
Awesome. Maybe we can do some video stuff as well. And congrats with all the stuff recently with the band. You guys are kind of everywhere right now. So thank you.
Yeah. New album dropped yesterday.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah. Good to finally have it out. I'm sure you know how hard it is sitting on music. You just want to share.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's one of those things where, by the time it comes out, I'm sure you feel the same thing. Like you're kind of over it.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's old news.
And then you gotta realize that for everybody else though, it's their first time hearing it. It's interesting to me. That's always interesting. But yeah, congrats on that. And we will do this again.